Mental illness is a sickness, not a weakness. I started thinking that a long time ago because I never felt weak. And I started speaking about it about 10 years ago. And here we are with the best experience of my professional life. I think I'd have to go back and, kind of look at my resume and all the awards that I won. Actually, I didn't win any awards. But this is being an amazing experience. And the biggest reason why is that people want to come on and talk about mental health. They want to come on and talk about addiction. And over the last couple of weeks, they've wanted to come on and talk about race relations. So the fact that there's people that want to be honest is a change in our world for sure. And the fact that not only will people say, yeah, I got a mental illness, or not only will they say, yes, I've had an addiction, I'm in recovery, but they'll give you details of it, which is the most valuable thing. I love the fact that Rich Clune is here today. Rich, how are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How you doing?
Good. Great to see you, man. And you have introduced me to Justin Johnson, your buddy. But why don't you go ahead and introduce him to us now, the audience?
Well, I couldn't allow both of you to go the rest of your lives without meeting each other. Both good friends of mine. This is Justin Johnson from Anchorage, Alaska. And Justin and I played together for 3 years on the Manchester Monarchs. 3 wild years, as we'll probably get into, and then 1 season for the Toronto Marlies. And he's one of the best humans I've met inside and outside of hockey. He's a very dear friend of mine, and it's good to see you today, Justin.
Good to see you too, Dickie. Miss you.
Hey, pleasure to meet you, Justin, even though you and I spoke on the phone a couple of hours ago. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Just trying to keep up with everything, keep all the balls in the air, and be productive.
You are in Anchorage, Alaska, which is I think you told me you were born in Seattle, then you moved to Anchorage, and then you had your hockey career, which took you all over, and you moved back to Anchorage.
Yes, sir. Yep. I've been back be 4 years this month. 4 full years now.
You guys ran together, so to speak, but I'm guessing that Justin, you as far as I know, you didn't have the same kind of problems as Dickie. Am I correct with addiction, with sobriety, with everything that goes with that?
No, not completely. No.
Not completely. No. Now, as a professional interviewer, that opens the door a little bit to say, what did you mean, not completely?
I'm aware of bad habits that I have, different things I do to try to cope with whatever I'm kind of confronted with. Whether that be maybe, let's say some of the busy work I have to do on the computer or preparing for different things. It's, pour myself a drink or stay up too late and kind of keep myself from being as efficient as I could be. Things that I know aren't helping me, and they're not helping me be healthier. And obviously, in saying that, they end up causing more stress because now I'm feeling anxious and I'm feeling guilty, and it just ends up kind of, you guys kind of understand how it just revolves. Yeah. But I think for me, just having the experience I've had with Dickie, I think that's allowed me to kind of be conscious of it.
Did you know Dickie before he's been sober for 10 years? Did you know him before that?
I played against him when he was with the Idaho Steelheads, and he was a lot of fun to play against. And that was right before I think he was called up to Iowa, I believe, or was it Iowa or was it Texas?
Yeah,
Dickie.
Iowa.
Yeah. And he was wild. And I just remember just thinking, who is this kid? And he was just completely fearless and in everybody's face. And here I was coming out of college playing with, grown adults. And I was just so amazed by the whole professional hockey thing. And to see, when you look at the program, he's 20 years old and he's completely, has no anxiety or fear of anything that's going on. Whereas for me, it was a really big deal to be playing at that level at the time. So I noticed him right away.
Rich, did you guys ever fight? Considering the fact that you both were fighters and Justin had a lot of fights, one of which we'll see in a couple of seconds. But did you guys ever drop the gloves? And if not, why not? And if not, why not? And let's get it on right now.
Oh yeah,
he was a dangler. You were a dangler, because I remember you were playing with the puck and on the power play, so it was a little different for him at that level.
Yeah, I can honestly say I've been lucky enough not to have to drop the Gubs. We call JJ the governor because he basically runs everywhere he goes, and he's affectionately known as the governor in our circles. But no, I haven't been on the other side of that big left bomb that Justin Johnson packs.
Yes.
And
so just so you know, Justin, that he thinks he's complimenting you by calling you the governor. But if I remember correctly, there was a governor of Alaska who, it may not be the biggest compliment to be compared to Sarah Palin. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
don't fall for that one, JJ.
Yeah,
don't bite,
no,
man. Don't bite.
I won't, but I definitely kind of know what you mean. But no, she was special.
You're not going to turn me and Justin against each other, Michael.
Well, give me another 20 minutes. But right now, you guys are together in a song that Sean Cullen has prepared for you. Listen to the lyrics, because they are written specially for Dickie and for Justin. And let's roll it, Phil.
Can't wait.
It's a nation in isolation. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Now's the time to try a new hair configuration. Dickie Clune, he loves his hair. Jufro or feathers, he doesn't care. Short on the sides and long on the top. Beard in the front, it just doesn't stop, yeah. Justin Johnson, he played the game. Monarchs or the Marlies, it's all the same. He hit John Scott and knocked him down. If I did that, I'd head out of town, yeah. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. There's a 70% chance of precipitation, yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing. Yeah, that was awesome, wasn't it? And it's amazing how he like zeroed in on the Dickie Clune hair. I mean, he's a guy who's never met you before, but apparently, I guess he could just tell you're a guy with good hair and a guy that knows he has good hair.
I mean, I haven't had my hair cut in months because of, the world we live in, but thank you. I appreciate that. I'm grateful I still have hair.
Yeah, hey, I'm happy to have hair, and I'm a long way in front of you. And I actually, if you look back, I've almost got a mullet. Like, you will be able to see hair in the back, which is, again, like one side of it is I'm glad that I have hair that can.
You know what? I was going to say, you are kind of going for that Joe Exotic look, aren't you? You're like,
I think we were all inspired by the Tiger King. All of us wanted to be Joe, or what was the woman's name? Carol Baskin. Oh my God. What a story. Like, the fact that there's one creep like that in the world is amazing. The fact that they could find like 4 of them is just crazy. Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
No, I was gonna say, you got something cool going on there. You're keeping your edge.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk. Dickie, you've been clean and sober. You've been in recovery for 10 years, right? I was at your 5th year anniversary where you got the 5-year chip.
Yeah.
And like another 5 years has gone by. Has it gotten easier over the last 5 years? More difficult? What?
Yeah. I'm very grateful to be sober today. What I will say is that, as the years have gone on, when I first got introduced to recovery and went into treatment, I went into treatment 2 times, once in 2009. And, I wasn't ready to really listen or do any of the work, and I didn't stay sober. And then 2010, I checked myself in, and my journey through recovery, I thought in the beginning, everything was just about putting down the booze and the drugs. And, I knew that I wanted to stop doing that. I wanted to stop, wanting to die or kill myself. But then beyond that, I didn't know what I was getting into. And, fast forward 10 years, the routine has become easier because I, repeat a lot of it the same day, but I've gained so much more awareness about myself and the fact that what makes me an addict, what makes me an alcoholic. And, at times it's extremely frustrating because it's like peeling back, layers of an onion. I start to learn more about how I truly am, and some of my glaring, character defects become much more apparent. And but that's been the beauty of the struggle. Like every day is a new day, and I really see it now that this is a disease that isn't going away. I identify as an alcoholic and a drug addict, and it's never going away. Like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be the same thing. So I have a choice. I can wake up and do something to my alcoholism, or my alcoholism is going to do something to me.
It's a great way. It's a great way to put it, Justin. So you were not friends with Dickie. It's the first time I've called you Dickie. I'm struggling a little bit here, but I'm gonna try to play it through.
You got to keep saying it. It'll be
I got to keep saying it. So you met Dickie before he was sober, but Dickie, when he was playing on the other team, you said was a wild man. I mean, we all know Dickie is kind of a wild man. When you became friends with him, how long did it take him to tell you that he was in recovery?
Well, first, when we talked about him being wild, another way I want to describe that is he had a menacing look on his face when I played against him the first time. And then when I started playing with him, I wasn't aware of it right away, but then obviously I became aware of it. And something that I'm not sure he's aware of, but for me, I was kind of in awe of him, because my ignorant or naive idea of someone who was recovering is that there's just certain cues or certain things that you just can't be a part of and still maintain that new way of life, that new normal. And so for him to be so dialed in socially to the team and so engaged and so enthusiastic and so energetic, for me, I was in awe of how in tune he was with everything around him and what he was doing. And obviously, obviously you've seen his physique. It's obvious that he's a dedicated and committed athlete. Just that on its own is. Am I allowed to curse?
If you think it's like the right time for it, you should do it.
Okay.
No, I tell people to speak how they would speak.
It was just effing incredible to me.
Now say it, man. Don't back away. Don't be afraid of the F word.
Just in terms of just that commitment, and then the commitment to something, being a professional athlete and being so young and still being so hungry. And he was not on the way down. He had a little experience up already and was fighting his way back. And it was just awesome to kind of get to see that and live that with him. And then having him be such a huge support for me, because I don't think I would have made it and hung around and established myself with him on that team, because kind of when I was reluctant to even show up there. And so it was kind of like fantasy camp, getting to play with Richard and Oscar Moeller and some of these guys, and Voinov and Lokhtianov, and being at that level and being exposed to it. I was just like, well, I'm here now, and who knows how long I'll be here, and I'll be back. And I think Dickie kind of stabilized me, and I think my awe and my interest and my respect for him allowed us to kind of generate a relationship, and I thank God for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it turned into something that I'm holding my head high because of this experience. And Dickie we all know our circle gets smaller in terms of who really matters to us and people that we know we're thankful for. So I really got a lot from observing him and seeing how he was living his life. And it changed my perspective on these changes that people go through.
Dickie, I'm feeling a little better about it. There's a handful, more than a handful, of NHLers, former NHLers, who are in recovery, just like you. And I know that you do phone calls with them, Zoom calls, because nobody can go to an AA meeting right now. We've had a whole bunch of them on the show. So who that's out in the open, obviously I don't want you to, anonymity is part of the whole thing, but there's a lot of guys that are out there front and center trying to do what you do, which is make a difference in people's lives. Who's meant something to you that came either before you or after you?
It's like when I do these interviews, right, it's like there's a part of me that's still, you think that you got to say the right thing, and like, because it's like that whole hockey interview, you bounce back and forth, and I'm trying to really drop that, right, and just have this conversation with you and Justin, fuck everything else. And it's like, hockey is a sport that has a long way to go as far as in all aspects of it. We can get into that. And the last 3 months with the world shutting down and everything moving online, and, I've been able to reconnect with friends in Los Angeles. And in turn, I knew that there was guys out there. There is an army, and I shouldn't use that word. Let me retract that word.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's not inappropriate.
There is a wide group of professional hockey players, retired, active, that are really healing and recovering and helping each other, and also getting outside of hockey and learning from other, men and women. And it's honestly, I apologize if the video cuts out. Sorry. But to answer your question, I mean, Nate Thompson, who's a really good friend of Justin Johnson's, who I've played against and got to meet. I mean, Nate and I have started to really grow a lot closer, and he's been very, public about his struggles with sobriety and mental illness. And he's the real deal, in a world where a lot of people can turn it on for a camera or an interview, or you look at their social media, and I got to check myself when I do things. You know what I mean? Like I'm all about service work and giving back. And the honest truth is I really hope this conversation helps people, but this doesn't really count towards my service work. And and we're taught that getting sober is like, you need to do things when nobody's watching, and you need to do things where you're not going to get the praise, because that's where the real growth works. Like what happens behind closed doors. And Nate Thompson's the guy who every day lives it. And I love Nate. And then, Jordan Tutu was a player that I looked up to. His recovery looks different than mine, but all in the same. To see the struggles that he's overcome. He's a leader in the Indigenous community, which is very much affected by addiction and alcoholism. And, overcoming the loss of his brother. And I don't like Jordan Tutu for me has been a huge hero. So there's so many guys I can name. And then, to turn it around, I've gotten so much help from players that I've played with that don't identify as alcoholic or drug addicts, like Justin Johnson. You know what I mean? JJ and I have played together for 4 years on 2 different teams. And the truth is JJ and I have taken on other teams together. Justin would be a quote unquote heavyweight in hockey circles. And we went into other barns, and this was, the game was different back when we first started playing, and fighting was a real thing. And we were literally going into these other rinks, going to war. And to have a teammate like Justin that, he's just a great guy, but B, to support my sobriety. And, I could see how he talks about me, and he would tell people, and he's proud of my sobriety. That's what makes a huge difference, is being accepted by my teammates that don't have the same struggles as me, but are like, I understand you, I'm with you, I support you. And then Justin and I, we've been in wars together, and that's made us, that's brought us as close as, you can get. Like I look at him as a brother, and my parents love him. And it's one of those things that I've gotten support from addicts, non-addicts, and it's so.
Okay, well, hold on one second, Justin, before you throw compliments back at him, and then he'll come back at you. And eventually we'll all go, oh, God, yes, you love each other. We understand that. But take a look. This is over the last, I think this is 54 for us, show number 54. You'll see some familiar faces and topics here. Roll it, Phil.
I'm a little bit over 2 years sober now.
Now I'm about 3.5 years sober.
9 years into sobriety.
I have 12 years sober.
And I'm coming up on 5 years clean.
So Sheldon, how long have you been sober for?
About 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years.
I got kicked out of Kelowna for drinking. I got sent home on a bus in Kelowna.
Really? Damn, dude, I was low, and I found a way to crawl out of it, man.
But I used alcohol to help me go to bed at night.
Wow. I mean, that's some of the most significant conversations that I've ever had, which really aren't conversations, because I'm just asking the questions. But when you find people like the two of you guys, when you find people like Jordan Tutu and like Nate Thompson and like who else was on there, Todd Fedoric and Daniel Carcillo and Brant Myers, I think I covered them all, who will not just say, yeah, I'm in recovery, but they'll really talk about how difficult that is, how it's a challenge every day, and support each other is really, really amazing. Are we good, Phil, to do the next thing on the show? Okay, so I guess I wanted to ask, Justin, you're friends with Nate Thompson as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is he a decent guy?
Yeah, he's a great guy. And Dickie was talking about, he's very sincere, just a warm, genuine, sincere, very giving. And I love how him and Dickie have become tight, because, it's another thing I can share with my friends. You know what I mean? Just in terms of, we all have the same relationships, and it just means that in the future, who knows, but there's going to be a lot of special moments, weddings, births of people's kids and whatnot. And right now, that's kind of what I'm excited about. I'm excited about, seeing what's happening with Dickie. And I told him the other day, I was like, man, I cannot wait to see what you're going to do, because you can do anything. And I know we don't have to do that back and forth thing, but I'm fired up, because now that I've kind of transitioned out of the game, and I see Dickie still playing, Nate still playing, and, but I've seen some other guys struggle, but for them, I'm pumped. And
what did you think? Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say something. When you talk about a lot of those guys, the one thing that I think a lot of these guys have in common is respect. And I think that, I don't know if I could articulate and explain it, but I really think respect plays a big part in this. Respecting yourself, learning to better respect yourself, respecting other people's story, and that kind of allows things to maybe sink in a little bit better. I don't know.
Dickie, you saw that video with a whole bunch of familiar faces. What were you thinking as you're watching it?
I mean, for those guys to publicly admit those things, personally doing it myself, I just know that, the amount of people that those 9 guys or however many popped up there, the amount of lives they've probably changed or inspired, it's, I can't put a word to it. It's unbelievable. And JJ just talked about respect. It's like, you look at the way that all those guys played, right? And the way that, Justin and I have played, and fighters lack self-esteem. Like, why do we fight, right? We fight, we want to play, but a lot of those guys lack self-esteem, and they fight to gain self-esteem. And to see players like that in a place of, mental health as opposed to mental illness, and have self-esteem and be able to look the world in the eye and be like, this is me, and I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm not afraid to admit that I've been demoralized and spiritually, emotionally, physically broken, with the public thinking that, they're big, tough, strong guys. And to know, I've been wrapped around a toilet bowl crying, wanting to fucking slit my wrists. And I know those guys have too. And, to admit the fact that they've been in those places, that's where you get the strength, and then how do you come up from there? How do you recover? How do you heal? And then in turn, how do you give that away? Because I was taught that you can't, to keep what you have, you got to give it away and pay it forward. So that's what I see when I see that video.
There's a couple of other guys on that video that you didn't mention, but I just, the thing about Nate is I didn't really like him. You know, I kind of felt like he was, you know, like, oh, look, I play in the game still, and I'm better than he said, I'm better than
You
Dickie.
always have something up your sleeve, Landsberg.
Always do. Nate, how are you, man?
Good, boys. What's going on? JJ, Dickie, how you doing, boys?
There's
Ned.
The 4-4.
The what?
I call him the 4-4, not 44. The 4-4. She's rolling.
Nice.
Look at that playoff beard, baby. Are you in Philly yet? Are you running those rocky stairs like I texted you the other day? Let's go.
Not yet Monday, but I'll be there soon, though.
So Nate, thanks for doing this. You and I mean, we played a clip from you a couple of weeks ago on the show, and you know, you're so memorable for me because, you know, every time someone is super candid and open and honest with something that privately people have kept inside for 100 years or longer is hugely impressive. And then I find out that Justin was at your wedding, right?
He was in my wedding. I've known, Justin, I call him JJ. I've known him since, JJ, how old was I when we first met? Probably
you had to be 9, 10, 11. And Nate was 3 years behind me, Mike. And so we would skate before him or after him. And I would chase him in the parking lot with my buddy. And as soon as we caught him, we would do the worst wedgie. And it was just great because we would wedgie him right there, and his mom loved it, and she laughed. She never got upset. But I still remember those days very fondly, chasing him to the parking lot.
He may not remember them as fondly as you would. And Nate, would you say, in terms of getting wedgied, that this is one of the best? That those two guys were pretty good at it?
Very good at it, and I couldn't outrun them. They always caught me. I remember, you know, obviously being from Alaska, you know, I would chuck snowballs at them, or, you know, and just get them riled up. But as much as I didn't like it, I think I loved it at the same time, and they would rough me up pretty good. But at the same time, I was very well protected from JJ from the time I was young, even till now. He's still a very protective friend.
Hang on one sec, okay, Nate? And Richie, or Dickie, or Richie, or Rich, or Richard. I don't know what the fuck to call you, actually, after a little while.
There's many personalities. That's...
Yeah. Well, you know, you never know what's going to come out when you get sober, right? So I put a little something together. We did. Hold on one sec.
Dickie Exotic.
Take a look at Dickie in a number of different settings. Roll it, Phil. You know what they say?
Dickie can do anything.
He really can, like...
Did you know Rich Clune also an actor?
Yeah, and what else?
Rich Clune, a choir boy at one point.
Really? Choir boy? Did he give up singing? No way. He was in Nashville.
I was just a young gun.
I bet you were. With what?
Had these big old dreams.
Sing it, Dickie. That's right, man. Whose pants do you want to get into?
We're in the Dickie's trouser section.
Of course you are. What did you think I meant?
We're going to give him a try. Dickie's barbecue.
I'm not saying anything. Come on, man. Bring those Dickies over here. And ladies, whose heart do you want to steal?
It's Dickie's.
Whose ass is the best?
It's Dickie's.
Which Dickie is that?
Dickie Clune.
That's right, and that's why we all say
Dickie can do anything.
Oh, man.
You know, it's so awesome when you can go on YouTube and you can feel like you can see all this stuff, you know, because I have to say, I was saying this to Casey when I was going through a video that, you know, I got to hand it to you that you've kind of tried your hand at, you know, a ton of different things. And I'm not poking fun at you yet, but I mean, you've sang, you've acted, you've like it seems like, I don't know if you were like this before when you were drinking, but it seems to me like you're going, hey, you know what? I got my life back and I want to enjoy it and I want to experience stuff. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think that, sorry, I had to swipe over to watch the video, but there's a lot going on, man. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just not afraid to embarrass myself. And, I don't know. I fucking live my life, do whatever I want. JJ,
yeah, that was my point. But of course, you wouldn't say, "Yeah, you're right, Michael. You exactly nailed it." Right? You know, you got to,
Yeah, I mean, all
you
those
can't possibly say that. But hold on one sec, Nate. When I know that you and Dickie are on Zoom together, right? A couple of times a week, or maybe more, maybe less. When you hear him speak about his sobriety, what do you take from it? What's the lesson that you have learned from Dickie?
Everything. I call Dickie, even though he's younger than me, I look up to him in a lot of ways just because of how well he treats his sobriety and how he puts his sobriety first and how many guys he helps. He helps me. So whenever I listen to Dickie talk, I listen and I take all of it because, I use it as that positive juice. Every time he speaks, I listen up because there's a lot of stuff I can learn from him, and he's been through it, but at the same time, he really works. He works the program. He works his sobriety every single day. He works his recovery, and you can see that in the way he lives. So I definitely look up to Dickie in a lot of ways.
The two of you, I'll get back to you in a second, Justin. Sorry for, speaking to these two guys because they both get really upset if they're not the center of attention. Like, you're a lot more relaxed than they are, but like Nate's just going,
Michael,
like,
don't make your problems my problems, okay? Don't make your problems my problems.
Are you using it? Are you using an AA expression on me? I think you are. That sounds like you got it from somewhere. Don't make your problems my problems. What I was going to say is, and this is kind of like my dream for mental health, is to talk about really serious things, but also to find a way to lighten them up. So from that light comment to this, Nate, you talked about suicide when you were on the show, and Dickie, you mentioned the fact that you have had suicidal thoughts. Can you expand on that? And then Nate, when he's done, I'd like to hear what you have to say about your own experiences. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's something, there's this sort of like concept of that we're trying to be restored to sanity, right? In 12-step program, that's part of one of the steps, being restored to sanity. And I think, early on, coming in and taking a really good look at myself and working with different, doing different modalities, whether it's step work, therapeutic work, it never really sunk into me just how much I was, that I had that was real, that I wanted to die. And it was one of those things where, like, I don't like using the quotes like "fake it till you make it." It was one of those things where they're like, Rich, do you have suicidal thoughts? And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, how many layers of that down until you really admit that. And in the beginning, it was like, yeah, I've been depressed. I've wanted to die. I never got to the point where I had put together, a formal plan, as they say. But every day it was like, I started getting those thoughts very young because I didn't know how to cope with reality. I didn't know how to process all the things that were going on. And at one point, a very normal thought for me was, well, I'll just, that's it. I'll just kill myself. Or hopefully I'll just accidentally overdose. Or, maybe I'll just go to sleep and I won't wake up, because I was so overwhelmed with the amount of, the road I had ahead of me if I was going to live. And that was a thought. And for any human being to be in that place, that is called mental illness. I think, people talk about mental health issues. I mean, that's not mental health, that's mental illness. And then over the years, as I've continued to, swallow pretty big chunks of truth about myself, I think recently that I've just acknowledged, how very mentally ill I have been. And the truth is, and Nate, you'll speak to this, and really anybody can relate, is that if I don't do the work daily and I don't have daily vigilance and I'm not doing the things that I've been taught, which, you know, it looks different for everybody, but for me, and I'm always open to learn. If I don't do those things every day, I will fall back into that place, because that's the nature of my disease. Alcoholic, drug addict, you know, it won't go well for me. And I don't even need drugs and alcohol to ruin my life. That's the truth. And if I don't stick to my program and I don't follow my recovery, it'll be over. And I see it more, you know, now than I ever have. And the truth is, you know, I'm still playing hockey, and if I'm not careful, I can ride that emotional roller coaster very easily. You know. Nate, you're muted. Nate, you're muted. You're muted.
It wasn't.
I don't know why.
It wasn't your fault.
Okay. No, I think you know, just to touch on what Dickie said, even for me too, I think it started at a young age where, you know, there were some stuff I went through, trials and tribulations, where, you know, you know, I was a very angry kid, and I think as I got deeper into my alcohol and drug addiction, you know, it got to a point where I didn't like Dickie said, I didn't really care how much, you know, how much, you know, maybe cocaine I did one day, and, you know, if I died off it, I died off it. I didn't think about the consequences, because, you know, I'm not sure if I really wanted to die, but I didn't really care if it happened. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where, like Dickie said, I didn't have a formal plan of, you know, committing suicide, but I had the thoughts of, you know, I mean, well, if it happens, it happens, and oh well. And you know, that was one of those things where, you know, being in that dark place and going through those things, you know, and before I came sober, I couldn't look myself in the mirror. I couldn't do it. I didn't want to. And now, you know, like Dickie said, you know, I know I'm going to touch on the same thing, but as I, you know, had some time, you know, even in the first, you know, 30 days of my sobriety, you know, it's one of those things where it was hard the first 30 days trying to, you know, get through, you know, having to feel, you know, because when you're using, that's why I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to feel those feelings. And, you know, and like you said, for me, it's the same thing. If I don't, and I've learned that, especially in the last year or so, even having over 3 years of sobriety, I have to stay vigilant and I have to work a program, because even if I don't drink and use, I am not a good guy. I am not a good husband. I am not a good father. I'm not a good human being. I have to work at a constant, I have to work a constant program and use all the tools to, like, work everyday things and be a good human. Because if I don't, things should go awry. So it's, you know, it's, for me, it's pretty simple, and I try to keep it simple and keep it basic so I can, you know, stay in the moment.
Hey, Nate, I know Dickie wants in, and so does Justin, but I asked you to come on and say hi, so I don't want to impact your time anymore, but I do really appreciate it. And, you know, I've spoken a lot about you to a lot of people, because you and I never met before. And I think that your rawness and openness is life-saving for some, and you may not be a good guy in your mind when you're struggling, but from what I can see, you're an amazing guy. So thanks for doing this, and I hope that we'll talk again soon.
Really quick, can I say something? Yeah, really quick, can I?
Yeah.
Like, Nate, I hope you understand that when you talk about being a bad guy, I want you to know, like, you've told stories, and I won't say the names, but when you would tell me stories about when guys would point things out to you, guys wouldn't do that if they didn't fucking care about you. You know what I mean? Because if you're just some clown and some good time Charlie, whatever, they would just let you kind of do your thing and let you kind of self-destruct. And make jokes and laugh, and while you kind of took yourself down, and they would have just watched that, with no feeling. But because you are such a good guy, they approached you and they confronted you with it because they wanted better for you. So I just want to make sure that was said after what you were explaining.
Thank you, I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah.
Love you, man.
Love you too.
I think we're losing. So you say goodbye to Dickie, and then we'll move on.
All right. See you, Dickie. Love you too, buddy.
Yeah, I'll see you Friday night, brother. Love you too.
All right. Sounds good, boys. Enjoy. Thanks, Mike. You're a real mensch.
Oh,
yeah.
So how funny is this? Because when Nate was on the show, we talked for a half hour. And then at the very end, he goes, I don't know if I used the word mensch or I said I'm Jewish or whatever. He goes, I'm Jewish too. And it was like, dude, you buried the lead. Do you know that expression, burying the lead, where the best story isn't on your front page? It's like, hello, it's pretty funny. So Justin, you were at his wedding. You were in his wedding party, right?
Yes.
I don't imagine there's a huge Jewish population in Anchorage. That's just my guess. I may be wrong.
Our mayor is Jewish, but I don't think he's Jewish, but we do have a bit of a Jewish population here.
Right. So have you been to another Jewish wedding?
Yes, I have. Actually, Dove Grimmett Morris, I think he's a goalie that Nate and Richie have played against a time or two. But he was a big Harvard guy, old school Jewish. He actually gave Hebrew lessons.
Really? To whom? I mean, not to the team.
No, but yeah, he would. I played with him in juniors in Danville in Illinois, and he would go tutor kids on how to speak Hebrew. Really
very
interesting.
cool.
Dove Grimmett Morris.
Very cool. And let me just why don't you, Nate, while you're still there?
You were joking in the intro about the hype of playing in Toronto.
We can't get rid of Nate. I keep saying goodbye and thank you, and he's still there. So why don't you teach Justin how to say oy vey?
Oy vey. Just oy vey. That's it. That's all you got to say. Oy vey.
Oy vey.
All in one.
You got to go,
vey.
oy vey.
There it is.
Right. And how about the bread that how about the bread that one might eat on Friday night?
Challah.
No. I mean, that's the right word, but it's a terrible pronunciation.
Challah.
There you go.
What?
Challah. Yeah.
Challah.
You like that, Mike? You like that, Mike?
There it is.
Yeah, that was awesome, Justin.
Did you see me spit? I spit even too.
I did. I felt that. But, the problem is, on Friday night, you light the candles, you start spitting. When you say challah, the candles get blown out. And then God knows what happens then. Nate, be well. Thank you.
Nader,
right.
hang your phone up.
Sorry. I'm not even driving. My wife's driving.
There's the woman that's the woman that converted you to Judaism.
That's the woman. Little special guest for you, Mike.
What's your wife's name? Sydney, they say that people that convert to Judaism are often more religious than the person that was Jewish beforehand. Is Nate now more observant than you?
That is a fact.
Really?
He knows everything and anything. And I went to Jewish day school growing up, so I'm very impressed that he knows as much as he knows and that it's more than I know.
Yeah, I know tons of people who went to Jewish day school, and none of them seem to have retained that much. It's like, if you're a parent, you send your kid to Jewish day school, and when your kid turns 30, doesn't know anything about the religion, it's like, can I get my money back?
Yeah. I've tried to brush up through his education, so hopefully I'll make our kids proud.
Yeah. Thank you. A pleasure meeting. I look forward to chatting with you again.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Enjoy.
Sydney
Okay.
Sydney doesn't take any shit, by the way, Mike.
No?
Oh no.
No. Oh no, she don't take no shit.
All
Well,
right, see
let's
you boys.
yeah,
I'll let you
we're
guys
we're
go. I
never
don't
getting
wanna
rid of
ruin-
you.
I don't
Oh
wanna
my
ruin
God,
this.
it's like Nate. Goodbye.
Keep
You
it
can lose
going.
Nate, guys. Phil, you
Yeah,
can lose
boy.
Nate. Sam, you can lose Nate. Just get him fucking off the show. God, he's like. Okay, Justin, I wanted to ask you. God, I don't know how long we've been going. Some of this is really good. His reception obviously wasn't great, but his message is incredible. So, I mean, there's probably the biggest issue of our time right now is race relations in the United States and to some extent Canada as well. I think as a Canadian, you start saying, oh, well, we don't have a problem with racism in this country. First of all, you're not acknowledging, First Nations, Native Canadians. And second of all, you're not really dealing with the issue that exists here. It may not be as bad as it is in the US. You as a black man playing a white man's sport, do you think it was more difficult for you than it was for a white guy like Richie?
Well, I mean, when you say the word difficult, I don't know if it was difficult. I think it was just different.
Okay. In what way?
I think it was different just from, you're having teammates that maybe might not be familiar with, black people or black culture. You're playing with guys from Europe. You're playing with guys from small towns in Canada, and they're just and they're not quite sure what their boundaries are, and so sometimes things get awkward. The difficulty would come from maybe somebody saying that something a little bit off color, or just maybe flat out hateful, maybe in a game. Maybe they don't know what else to say to get to you other than to say something horribly nasty to you. So I wouldn't call it difficult. I think there was things that happened to me growing up that I probably wasn't very, I didn't pay attention to because I didn't really understand it, or I didn't allow it to affect me just out of ignorance. So, maybe missing out on certain opportunities or being treated a certain way. Now as an adult, I kind of now I think back and I'm like, that was a little, that wasn't right. So I wouldn't say difficult. I would say awkward. I would say you're in a position where sometimes you have to kind of educate people or teammates, and Dickie's dealt with it, and he can probably speak to this pretty good too because he's played with some other guys and he's very incredibly aware, and so I know there's been situations where he's probably had to educate teammates about how to deal with their black teammate. I guess you just get used to pushing and fighting, and certain things they just don't get in your way. And maybe it's a character thing. Maybe it's just maybe it's a pushing things away, compartmentalizing them, and not wanting to be dealing with it. But I can't say it was difficult. I honestly can't say that.
I got that word from you, Dickie. When you and I talked before, you said that, making it to where you made it was more difficult for you than it was for Justin. And my guess is that Justin, as hockey players are apt to do, this sense of humility leads the way. And it seems to me like Justin probably doesn't want to say, oh, it was more difficult for me, because that's not the way hockey players talk. What's your perception of it?
Yeah, well, I think what you're referring to is that I know what you're saying. What I think you might have reversed the lines. What I said on our previous phone call was that it would have been more difficult for Justin as opposed to me. I think you.
That's what I said. Yeah, or at the very least, that's what I meant.
Yeah, no, and I think like Justin's a very assertive man and a very strong-willed man. But what I will say is that the essentially systemic racism that's being brought to light in our world now. Hockey has been a very sport played by predominantly white men, and I've had nothing but the utmost respect and admiration for my teammates of color, specifically Justin, a black man, and that it is a very real thing that he's had to work twice as hard, also coming from Alaska, where, hockey isn't scouted as much. And that's just not right. And now the transition that hopefully the world is going through to acknowledge the fact that, certain privileges that are afforded to, people like me that are white, will change. And I'm still learning and waking up to the fact that, it's not enough to just not say racial slurs or the things that still occur in hockey. Let's be real here. They get said. Justin just talked about it. And how can I, as a white man, stand alongside someone like Justin, who's a black man, and, learn and advocate for, the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's a learning experience for me too. I mean, but the reality is that it is twice as hard for someone like that. And that's not right. And one day it will change.
I guess something, Mike, that I could say too there is, I think I did kind of feel like it's a harder to get and easier to lose. I definitely did maintain that. I don't want to say anybody made it painfully obvious to me, but I do think that it was a harder to get and easier to lose kind of mindset that I had. I did carry that with me.
Right. And am I right, though, that the sense of humility, you don't want to come across and say it was tougher for me because, as a decent person, you don't necessarily want to look for, want to point out things in your past that may have made it more difficult. But, the truth is there's no way that it wasn't more difficult, but you don't want to say that because you're a good guy. And you think that, especially as a hockey player, you don't want to be seen as using a crutch.
Yeah. And it's so great to have these conversations and get to be a part of this too, because now things are, as much as some of that nasty stuff exists, Ron Hextall knew I was black and he called me. You know what I mean? People knew I was black, I'm just using him as an example. And people white men gave me opportunities. And so maybe I'm just kind of focusing on that and ignoring some of the other stuff. I don't know.
Hey, Richie, Dickie, God, why am I saying Richie? Well, I can have my own nickname for you. Why not? God, I should probably wrap this up, but I have something to say before. And that is what you said, Dickie, when you said maybe it's not enough not to use racial slurs. I thought about it. I think, from my standpoint, what I took away from that is it's not enough not to be a racist. At this time in our history, you have to be an activist. And when I say an activist, I mean you have to be consciously aware of the fact that you need, as a white guy, and as a white guy in my case, we need to push society to making a difference. It's not just enough to say, okay, well, God, I don't see people, as black or white or whatever. You got to actively say, I got a role to play in this.
Yeah. And just because we've been talking about hockey so much lately, and I'll just take the small sample size of hockey, as a player, you look around next to you and you see your teammates, and, specifically the teams that Justin and I played for in Manchester. We had Justin, we had a kid named Alex Hudson who came in, a black kid from California, amazing guy, amazing player, didn't have a very long career. And his athletic ability was like unbelievable. And then we had Jordan Nolan and Dwight King, both indigenous, indigenous men from Canada. But it's like when I look around, all right, so the LA Kings were very progressive and very inclusive, but that's still not very many people. You know what I mean? That's not very many people. So, how can that change? How can that change? Like, take, for example, I'm an 87 birth date in Toronto, grew up in Toronto, so I'm 33. So for my age group, growing up in the city, I think everyone would probably be in agreement that Andrew Cogliano, a Toronto-born player, has probably had the best career out of all of us. He's probably made the most money and played the longest. He's comes from a great family. He's a really good friend of mine. Hands down, the most talented player, and it wasn't even close, was Chris Stewart. is Chris Stewart. You know, Chris is still playing. Chris Stewart, it wasn't even a question. I played against him since I was 8 years old. And because Chris, being a black man, you know, growing up in Scarborough, Chris made it, and so did his brother. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of, you know, it's rare. So why isn't there more Chris Stewarts and Anthony Stewarts and Justin Johnsons? Because the truth is, you know, in society, hockey's a very privileged sport. It's an expensive sport. And there's just not enough kids that are getting a shot from the time they're 4, 5, 6 years old to have the careers so that one day a hockey team in the NHL can be made up of, you know, 10 black players, other you know, cultures and races, as opposed to now, you know, if you get 2 or 3 on a team, you have a very diverse team. So, you know, hockey's got a long way to go, and I don't think anyone's hides that fact. And I think that it will change, and people like myself can learn and can, you know, stand in solidarity and be allies and allow people like Justin and allow players like the Stewart brothers to lead the way and to follow. And that's kind of where I'm at in the work. So, yeah.
Okay, well, this was awesome. I would like to extend an invitation for you guys to come back. I mean, we're going to be doing this daily show probably for another 2 weeks, and then we'll sort of take inventory. You know, do we want to keep doing it? Do we want to make it weekly? But, you know, I think you both have so much to say, and there's so many different areas. I didn't even get to ask, you know, a handful of the questions that I really wanted to ask. So why don't we make a date to come back and do this again? Are you good with that, Justin?
Have to.
Okay. And Dickie?
Anytime. Look forward to
it. Just answer with a yes or no. If your teammate, when you were teammates with Justin, if one of your teammates had said something that you thought was racist, would you have called him out?
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, I would have.
Okay. Let's talk about it next time. Thanks, guys.
It's just like that. It's over.
It won't be over until I say it's over. And Phil, you ready for this? Yesterday on the show, we had Connor Carrick, and we picked a couple of selected clips from his amazing experience, for us at least. Take a look at Connor Carrick, and now it's over.
We were joking in the intro about, you know, the hype of playing in Toronto, but that was a kind of a culmination where I decided, you know, to try and take hold of my quality of life, my quality of my mental state. I put so much into my physical state. And we know, you know, if you eat the right things, you train this hard, you'll get the results you want physically. And we're also learning, you know, mentally, there's tools and resources. Everything as simple as, you know, breathing techniques to getting outside, you know, medication's a route that's, you know, continuing to develop. And I was sick of being a prisoner to my performance as a player. Of course, I still deeply care about my performance. I still deeply want to do well. But, you know, performance anxiety is something that I think most, if not all, NHLers still experience on a daily basis.